Hey everybody! So today we're going to talk about Neptune. Here's the card for it. And the planet is what energy needs to be expressed. The house is where or what area of life energy needs to be expressed through. And the sign is how energy needs to be expressed. So Neptune is a planet, so Neptune is what energy needs to be expressed. Neptune is at home or domicile, I'm not sure I'm ever saying this right, in Pisces. So when you find Neptune in Pisces, it is in its home sign. It is at home here. Both Neptune and Pisces have an affinity for the 12th house. You do not have to think of it as natural rulership, but there is an affinity there. There just is. Neptune is exalted in Leo, meaning this is, while it's at home in Pisces, it might function at its highest in Leo, its highest possible functioning in Leo. It is in fall in Aquarius, because Aquarius is opposite Leo on the wheel, and it is in detriment in Virgo, because Virgo is opposite Pisces on the wheel. Now, exalted in Leo. So, Neptune is very creative energy, right? It's also very spiritual. So to come through, to be in Leo, helps all of this to kind of shine, if you will. So I'm pretty sure that's why the exaltation is in Leo. I remember when I learned this a long time ago, it didn't, for some reason, this particular one didn't quite click for me at first. But I really think it probably is because this planet, when this planet functions well, it can shine very, very well in Leo. Of course, that depends on everything going on in the chart, but it does have that capability. It is now in fall in detriment, fall in Aquarius, detriment in Virgo. Those are probably the two signs that Neptune has the hardest time functioning in, or functioning in a way that it wants to function, right? Virgo, for instance, is very physical world rooted. It's very realistic. Neptune is none of those things. So it can feel a little at a loss in Virgo. In Aquarius, fall in Aquarius is interesting also to me, because Aquarius, it does make sense, but because Aquarius is, Neptune Pisces energy is pretty collectively focused, right? It is, in a more spiritual way. Aquarius is also collectively focused, but it's in a different way. There's usually, Aquarius, there can be a scientific bent to it. So Neptune in Aquarius, Neptune is very, very spiritual. And so in a more scientifically geared sign, it can have, like Aquarius, there might be some issues with it being able to be as spiritual. Though I will say this, if the person can get, and I realize this is generational, Neptune is a generational planet, so, it's a lot of people will have it in Aquarius. But if these people born under that, if they can learn how to somehow merge the spiritual and the scientific, I feel like this wouldn't be, I feel like Neptune could do very well in Aquarius if that bridge is, if they're able to make that, bridge that gap there between science and spirituality. I feel like it might not be so much in fall in Aquarius if it were able to be, if Neptune were able to express spirituality, maybe taking a more scientific approach to it, perhaps. But yeah, so that's starting out there. So Neptune. Okay, Neptune is very spiritual, like I mentioned. It's a very, very spiritual planet. It is all about growing spirituality. That's what it does. It's very boundless. It is very much the concept of one, like that we're all one and we're all connected. Neptune expresses this. This is something that Neptune wants to express. It's very, very sensitive. It's very compassionate. Now, it's all of those things. It's those things. But unlike, I know I mentioned this, or I'll mention this in the Pisces video, or I did mention it. I'm not. It's not as consciously aware as, say, Cancer to its sensitivity. So there's less of a chance for a wall to come up with Neptune. With Neptune energy, whereas with the moon and with Cancer, there might be. It's not as aware of this, but it knows it to be true. It's able to transcend, which is another key word for Neptune. It's able to transcend that need for walls, probably because it doesn't realize that it might actually need those walls to begin with. Because with Neptune, I mentioned boundlessness, and there is a lot of boundlessness with Neptune, and that can be a really great thing. But it can also cause some real boundary issues. Again, that depends on everything going on in the chart, right? That may not be your case with your experience with Neptune, or the chart you're weaving. That may not fit, but I find a lot of the time it does. There do tend to be some boundary issues. They might be boundary issues in the area of life that Neptune falls in. Let's say you've got Neptune in the first. You might have difficulty enforcing personal boundaries. You might feel like you do, and people just fucking walk right all over you. Anyway, that would be Neptune's unclear influence. Neptune is unclear. Actually, I'll be honest. Out of all the planets, Neptune is probably the one that I have the biggest bone to pick. Honestly, not that I really need to pick have a bone to pick with the planet, but personally, I find it to be the most challenging due to that unclear, because there is a because it is more unconscious by nature, right? It is there's just a lot of there's a lack of clarity with Neptune. There really can be. Now again, depending on, and that generally, I won't say universal, but that generally is pretty true. Now, what the person does with that depends on the whole chart, right? But like, I don't know, the area of life that Neptune falls in, right? In the house that it falls. I don't know, let's say you've got Neptune in the 7th house. Perhaps there's a lack of clarity in what you need in relationships, or the role that you play in relationships. Not universal, but it could play out that way. It could kind of play out that way. It could also make you, able to transcend boundaries in relationships, which isn't a bad thing at all, But there does tend to be a lack of clarity with Neptune. Neptune is also, I think of it as the Lord of illusions. Some people really like illusions. Sometimes it's more comfortable to live in them. But, and while, to a certain extent, we all, maybe I'm too hard on it sometimes, because to a certain extent, we all need illusions, right, to make it through. To a certain extent. To a certain extent, we do. To a certain extent, we all need to con ourselves to make it through the day. And Neptune might do that in the area of life that it falls. I don't know. Perhaps Neptune falls in your second house. Maybe there's some illusions about your self-worth, or some lack of clarity about that. Now, that in of itself may not be a good thing, and again, not universal, but maybe until you're ready to deal with any issues that stem from such, perhaps Neptune helps you to make it through. But, you know, then there comes a point where you don't want to keep doing that, right? And that's kind of, you know, depending on what all is going on in the chart, will kind of give you an idea as to, you know, how you can maybe stop yourself from doing that, or, you know, what have you. It's also very creative. I think I mentioned that. There can be a sense of martyrdom. Neptune that might be something Neptune wants to express. You might feel more like a martyr in the area of life. Perhaps it falls, and, you know, whatever sign Neptune falls in will show how that's expressed, but, and any aspects may, but there can be a sense of martyrdom. That's something that you probably don't want to. I mean, nobody needs to be a martyr. So that's probably something that should be watched. Honestly, I could go on and on about this one. But I'm going to stop here. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can find us on Instagram at Let's Fuck With Astrology. I am at Saturn Season Astrology on Instagram. Natalie is at Abaturno Astrology on Instagram. If you're watching this on Instagram, you can find us on YouTube by searching Let's Fuck With Astrology. If you do the Reddit thing, you can find us on the subreddit Let's Fuck With Astrology. And if you're interested in the star cards, you can go to letsfuckwithastrology.com/star-cards. Okay, y'all. I'll see y'all later.